So last year was very busy, very, very busy. Just running around like crazy. And I didn't get very much time to do anything except for work. And in December I thought, well, you know, I've got some time, let me go and play around. So I logged into Project Euler and projecteuro.net and started solving problems. And it's a silly little website where they have all these maths problems that you can solve. And nothing to do with Java as such, but it's fun because you keep on trying to solve complicated algorithms and try and figure out what's going on with the maths and so on. And these problems get progressively more difficult, so if you've never tried it, you should try it. I'm actually number 25 in Greece, so, and I haven't solved that many compared to Germany or, I don't know, USA. They really solve a lot of these things. But, you know, I enjoyed it a lot, but the problem is that when I'm coding something like that, I get very absorbed in it and I can't sleep. You know, so I'm like all night long, I'm thinking about the algorithm, and in my sleep I'm coming up with better solutions. And then I wake up and my wife says, "Can you take the children to school?" And I say, "Yeah, just one moment, I've got to just quickly try this out." And then I'm typing it in and trying virtual threads and parallel streams and all sorts of things. And then, of course, we get to school late. So it's so it was exhausting. And at one point I said, well, let me do something else, because I just want to take some time out and play around. And so this is Mr Manolis, as we call him, from Crete. And he is the second oldest man in our village. I live on the island of Crete in a village called Chorafakia. 91 years old, he's still the lead psaltis in the church, and he stands there for 3 hours on a Sunday. And he spent 20 years putting together a history book about our area. But it's in Cretan, right? He's got really good memory. I went there and I talked to him, and my Synteknos grandfather was a teacher, and it was actually his teacher. So that's how, my Synteknos is a bit older than me. But he told me everything about him. He said, well, he did this, and after he taught me, he went here. So, and so we met in the village, and one of the things they do is they make tsikodia. Now, tsikodia is a bit like raki, but tsikodia is a Ghanaian name, and it's basically the medicine that solves all problems, okay? If anybody ever offers you it, don't take it. It's not a good idea. It'll make you forget all the problems, not solve all the problems. And so these are his two sons, Giorgos and Yannis, and they make this, and they have like 1 week, and they have to just brew, distill without stop, because they've got a license for 5 days, and they've got to do as much as they can. So I went there, and it's a very social thing, the tsikodia. I remember one time I was running through the village, and one of my elderly friends, Mr. Yannis, he said, "Hey, that's my Greek name. Come sit down, have a tsikodia." Obviously, he said that in Greek, of course. And I said, I'm busy running. I'm doing my exercise. I can't have a tsikodia now. I'll come another time. And unfortunately, the next week, he passed away. So I missed out on the tsikodia. And so I learned the lesson that when somebody invites you to tsikodia, you always say yes. It doesn't matter what time of day, it's always yes, right? And if you say to them, "But I've got work to," they say, "They're birazi." Doesn't matter, you can work later. Anyway, so that's sort of the history of these, and this is Yannis. He was actually an actor in a movie in Greece as well. And so this is the book. This is the book that he wrote. And at one point when I went there a few years ago, he said to me, "I'll finish the book," because he was trying to find someone to type it in for him. I can't read Greek well enough, not handwritten Greek, and it's written in Cretan, not Greek, Cretan. So it's got the Cretan words, which I guess I know some of them, but I don't know what is Cretan and what is Greek, because I live in Crete. So to me, it's just Greek, but it's Cretan. It's got about almost 500 photographs, and when he told me he finished it, I bought it, and he wrote a nice thing in front for me, but I couldn't read it because my Greek is terrible. I can't, I mean, this is just text and text, and it's also a very flowery language, so I couldn't really read it. And so I asked him whether I could translate it into English. So I had this idea, and there he is reading his book. I had this idea to simply make a WordPress website, 5 minutes, upload a plugin to automatically translate the pages with Google Translate. And it sort of worked, but it's Google Translate, right? So didn't do a very good job, but it sort of worked. And then at some point I wanted to upgrade the plugin, and it stores the translations in a database on the server, and I lost all the translations. So now I was back to square one, and I thought, there's got to be a better way to do this. And I then tried to convert the whole PDF to LibreOffice, which also sort of worked, but then I'm a programmer, I don't like duplicate work, and I like to divide and conquer. So I didn't find a way to embed documents within documents with LibreOffice. So it also wasn't really the way to do it. Translating a book would take lots of copying and pasting, which I didn't want to do either. So I wrote a book a few years ago with AsciiDoc, and I thought, that's got to be a better way. And so I translated again the PDF to via some steps to AsciiDoc, and then I could break up the book into hundreds of chunks. Basically, 1 or 2 pages would be one chunk. One section would be one chunk. Each photograph with a photograph description would again be one chunk. And then from AsciiDoc, I can translate it to EPUB, to PDF, to HTML, whatever I want, basically. So it was a very nice process. And of course, because it's now all just text-based, I could put everything into GitHub and manage my project that way. Now, the book has hundreds of photographs at the back, so you can see the front it's all text, all the text over here, as you'd imagine. And then you've got at the back, you've got hundreds of photographs. Some of these are of places which don't exist anymore, so we can't redo them because they're gone. But each book has a number and a description. The description, of course, in Greek or Cretan, the number mostly matched the number that was referenced in the book, but not always. So it took several days trying to figure out what numbers match with what. But that I managed to do eventually. But I wanted to translate all of the descriptions into English, so I actually know what this is about. So this is the beach color thus, where I go running every morning. And it says the description and also in the translation. Now, the original book was made for printing it, but it's a very limited audience. I mean, maybe 100 people will ever read it, maximum, because Village is small and it's a thick book. I've read it, his son has read it, his sons have read it. I don't know how many others have read the book from cover to cover. And it was made so that you could print it without being too expensive, right? So you've got all the black in front and then the colored at the back, obviously. But it's very hard to navigate, because as you're reading, you see, oh, there's a picture number, I don't know, 152. Now I've got to look and find that picture, 152. It doesn't go for nice reading. And of course, we don't have that problem if we have HTML or PDF. We can put everything together. So that's what I did. One thing I did was I redid it so that everything is together. Of course, to print it would be very expensive, but you can read it more nicely. But I treated it as a software project, not as a translation project. Everything's broken up to lots of chunks, all in GitHub with the make file and scripts to build everything for me. So that made it very easy. And Google Translate is amazing compared to not having anything. But that's where it stops. I read lots of the Greek news I read with Google Translate, and I can sort of make out what they're saying. But it doesn't read well. And I tried ChatGPT 3.5 with the free version, which was much, much better than Google Translate, but still not that great. And then I tried ChatGPT 4, and it was really incredible. It even translates poetry to sound like poetry. So here's a little poem that's in the book. I don't think this is Cretan. I think this is Greek. But it's a little poem, and you know, don't have to read the whole thing. And then Google Translate, it sort of does something that expresses what it's about, which is okay. And then the ChatGPT is already a vast improvement over Google Translate, the ChatGPT 3.5. So you have like, before we have, and gave the mother a sweeter kiss at the bottom, and then now it's, and gave sweeter sweetness to a mother's kiss. It sounds a bit more poetic. And then the ChatGPT 4 was then again a step up. So I was quite happy with the translation, but here's the problem. I don't actually speak Greek well. I mean, I can order Yidopita, you know, Diobedes Sparakalo. I can say that, you know. Anything to do with food, I'm okay. I can manage that. But if it goes to, you know, poetry or, I'm lost. And sometimes when it did the translation from Cretan to English, it got it completely wrong. Now, when you read the English and you realize that it can't possibly be right, they actually manually fixed it with the help of my syntechnos. But most of the time, it did a really good job. So here's a little example where, so what I tried initially was to copy and paste the text into the ChatGPT prompt. And I would say something like this. I'd say, translate into English, comma, keeping AsciiDoc tags intact. And then I'd copy and paste in the Greek. Here you can see panoramic photo of the meadow as it is in current times. Let's try this also with, and also IntelliJ also has an integration which you can use as well. So let's do it there as well. So we're going to go to AsciiDoc, go to the Greek, go to the images, the photo blocks, and we'll look for image 049. And it's this over here. So you can see there's a picture of a meadow, which is, let's move this over a bit. It's basically this over here. So that's the meadow. And the Greek text says, blah, 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 of livadiou, okay? And if I right-click this and I say, or I select it, and I press Alt-Enter, I can go to AI Actions, and I've added a prompt myself that says Translate to English, which then says Translate to English, keeping the AsciiDoc tags intact. And it now does the translation for me. So it says, here's the English translation of your AsciiDoc text. Panoramic photo of the meadow as it is in these days, okay? And so I tried that for a bit, but it didn't scale well because, you know, you don't want to go to each file, Alt-Enter, you've got to wait for the translation to happen and then copy it back. It doesn't really work. And of course here, there's a slight mistake because it's actually, the area is called Livadi. So this is supposed to be a capital letter, right? It's and if you do a capital letter, and then you say translate to English, it's going to give you a different result. It's going to say panoramic photo of Livadi, which is actually the correct thing to do. But, you know, the original was handwritten, and somebody typed it out, and little mistakes like that occur now and again. All right, so this was nice, but it didn't scale. Also, there's quite a limit as to how much you can translate at a time and put into ChatGPT at a time. Now, this generative AI is interesting because it generates a whole bunch of, it solves a whole bunch of problems for me. But there's concern. First of all, what about copyrighted material? Now, there are ways around that. There are certain large language models that allow you to control where they're getting their sources from. But, you know, you might leak sensitive business material. That would be a problem. And maybe this is making a lot of programmers unemployed. If you look at the trueup.io/layoffs, you'll see how many tens of thousands have lost their jobs in the IT world, in the tech world, in the last few months, or weeks, rather. But other jobs are also being lost. For example, I know somebody who's got a website for jewelry for brides, you know, people getting married. And her father sent me a picture and says, look, look at this model, AI generated. So the model that was modeling her jewelry was AI generated. So all these pretty people who think they're always going to have a job because they're so pretty, sorry. All these clever people who think they're so clever, programmers, sorry. You know? Unfortunately, and when he sent me the picture, I said to him, well, I can see that that's AI generated. There was something about the pictures looked odd. And I said, I can see that. But then I looked at the website, and I actually couldn't tell which were fake and which were real people. So even jobs that you might think you would never replace with AI are being wiped out with generative AI. So these are interesting. Maybe hairdressers are safe for now, but I don't know how that will be sorted out. Oh, by the way, I've got a small gift for you. There's a data structures course, Java data structures. That coupon expires at 2:30 today. So if you get that, you'll have access to it forever, but you need to get that. If you enable emails, you can get other benefits as well. But so that's a small gift if you want to get that. All right. So it expires at 2:30, not tonight at 2:30. Okay. So what I then tried to do was to bulk translate the photos. So I would copy and paste 50 photos at a time, translate them with ChatGPT and the prompt, and then copy it back. But it still didn't work too well because there's a limitation on the number of tokens. You really don't want to send too much at once. And then I thought to myself, I was sitting down at the beach thinking, I wonder if there's a better way, right? And, well, instead of copying and pasting, I just said to ChatGPT, show me how to do this. Show me how to integrate with your API. And of course, it knows how to do that. So it showed me how to do it. And it showed me using the Apache HTTP client, step by step. But I didn't want to. I wanted to use the Java HTTP client. So I changed the prompt and I said, please show me using the Java 11 HTTP client. And just a minute later, it spat out the code that I needed to do the work. And this is what it looks like. Basically, you've got your API URL. You've got your API key. Of course, here you've got to put your own private key. And then there's a main send prompt, tell me a joke. Now don't ask ChatGPT to give you a joke. The jokes are not very good. It doesn't know humor, but other things it can do quite well. So it gave me this information. Then it showed me you make a HTTP client. We make a request connecting to the URL with the authorization, with the API key, the content, the type of model which it put up as GPT 3.5 Turbo, which is fast and cheap, but not so good. And then it made the request as a post URL with the prompt, which the prompt was, tell me a joke, right? And then it made a request, a response from the request, sent the request, and got the response, and printed out the result. And it actually worked really, really well. I was quite surprised how easy it was to integrate with it. Of course, you have to set up your API and your token and all of that stuff. But once you've done that, it's actually quite easy. And then the first version didn't do anything with JSON, so that's of course a problem. So I said, well, do it again, but this time use JSON, such as the Google version, JSON, I think it's the Google version. And again, ChatGPT created all the classes for me from the JSON messages. And so I've got all my records over here, all nicely created. And then I wanted to translate all the AsciiDoc files. So I said, well, write some code for me to generate to go over the directory and send each one of the files individually to ChatGPT. And it just wrote the code for me. Now, I had to change a few things here and there. You still have to steer it a bit because it's not perfect, but very quickly you can do this. So what I did over here was I made a stream, and the stream then connects and sends each item to the translation to the network. Now, this you shouldn't do with a parallel stream, because with a parallel stream, it's ideally only for working with code that's non-blocking. If you're doing blocking code, it's not the best thing to have as a parallel stream. So how long does it take? Well, we've got different models. The GPT 3.5 is quite quick. It's not very expensive. We'll try it out now in a moment. We're going to translate the book into Polish and see how long it takes. But it depends on the number of requests, the number of request and response tokens. So how much work are you giving the API to do? And there are rate limits to stop you from going crazy and sustaining too much at once. So the other thing I wanted to do is I wanted to actually translate the book in parallel. So I wanted to as many requests as I can fit into my budget at once. So if I'm doing a talk for 40 minutes, I can't spend half an hour doing a book translation. It's got to be done taka taka, as we say in Crete. Fast, fast. So what I did was I used virtual threads, of course. I mean, I've been doing virtual threads for a very long time. And basically what you do is you start an executor with the virtual thread per task executor, and you simply run it over with that client. And then what you can do is you can use the structured concurrency, and basically making a shutdown on failure over here, for example. And you just filter it, you do the stream as you did before, but inside here. Now, I changed a few things here, and sorry, in my code in order to make it more robust, because I don't want it to fail if one of the translations fails. I just want to retry that. But basically, that's how I did it, to do it in parallel across with as many threads as I want. I mean, this can go up to like millions of threads at once. Of course, I'll get throttled if I do that, but okay. So let's try Polish. And what we want to try to do is to translate this book, this nice thick book. It's the PDF is like 500 pages of very dense material. We're going to translate it into Polish, and we're first going to try it with ChatGPT 3.5, and then we'll try version 4, and we'll see how much it costs. This is the actual money that's going to cost me. So we're going to start here. This is now my current account. It's got $104 loaded up. So that's my current balance. And in the first version, I'm going to run it. So let's go to this, configure, let's go to this one here. I'm going to run it with ChatGPT 3.5 and single-threaded. So this over here is let me quickly go to the right place. I've added Polish over here, PL. So the language Polish, PL. And then the Magic Book Translator at the moment has a GPT throttle, a semaphore of 1. So it only allows one section to be translated once, and there are almost 800 sections, little files. And we'll see how it runs. So let's run it. This is now running with 3.5. This over here is it's 3.5 over here. So we'll start with that one. And let's run it. So we can see that it's sending one chunk, and then the results are coming back. And it's coming back in Polish. I don't know Polish, but... Oh, good. Fantastic. There you go. So there you go. Dom Nikolaos Tsitsidakis. There you go. Cool. Love it. But you will notice that the Polish is very. It sounds a bit formal, right? Because that's how the book was written originally. The English also sounds like that, because that's how this gentleman speaks. He's an elderly gentleman. Okay, so it's going through it. I'm going to stop it here, and we're going to see just how many it actually managed to translate. Find chapters, photo blocks, minus name. So it's only done 19, okay? Because it's got to send it up there, wait for the response, and I'm connecting via my cell phone. So there's a lot of bandwidth, but it takes a while. So let's try this again, but this time we're going to beef it up a bit. We're going to make a semaphore of, let's make it 100, and hopefully we won't get throttled. So now we're sending 100 virtual threads at a time, 100 requests at a time. And you can see it's going through fairly quickly now. if you go and count how many we've got, we've already done 484. So it's within a very short amount of time, we will have translated the book. Now, some of the files are larger than others, so it won't, they won't always be as fast. Obviously, the larger it is, the longer it takes. But it's getting through it quite quickly. So we're almost done. You're looking at about 2 or 3 minutes, and we should be through. Now, we started at $104.60, I think, or 72 cents, I think it was actually. But say 104 point something. And of course, this is now draining my account. It takes a bit of time to update it. But it doesn't cost that much with 3.5. The translation's not as good, but it also doesn't, we're almost done, I think. It's got about 700 and something files. And what happens is it gets stuck sometimes because, you know, there's a very long, ChatGPT sometimes gets stuck, so you have to retry it and so on. It's a bit fuzzy, the whole thing. But we're getting through it. And the few things which were problematic is that sometimes it doesn't translate the whole file. Like it'll translate half the file. So the trick I used is at the end of each file, I have like special symbols. I add these into the prompt so that when I read it back again, I look whether that is actually in the file. And if it's not in the file, then I put in a comment into the file saying, check that everything was translated. All right, I think we're almost done. Let's just see, there's one more file actually. It's stuck on one, there's only one left. So I'm gonna just restart it, give it another try, and hopefully that will then run. There's just one file left, which is the month of May 1, so it's a largish file. And now hopefully that'll be done. In the meantime, I'll just try and build it. So I'm going to say make language equals Polish. And now it's going to make, now there are some mistakes, and the make file will show you some mistakes. Sometimes what they'll do is they'll translate image, the tag image, to the Polish equivalent of image, for example. So it'll get some things wrong, but overall, you know, it does a pretty good job. So I should be able to actually generate a book from that. So it's finished this one. So it's finished that last translation. Okay. Now, the generating the PDF is what takes the longest. The other ones are quite quick to generate. So that was ChatGPT 3.5, and it took I didn't really put my eye on the clock, but it was fairly quick. It didn't cost too much. So let's open the book, and we'll see whether it looks like it's something which you could imagine being in fact Polish. So my village, Polish PDF. So there you have the book. What do you say? Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. But the English is the same. So the English is also slightly formal, slightly stiff, but you can make head and tail of it. Now, you know, the book is really just it's for curiosity, because there'll be some Polish people living there. They're going to go, okay, we want to read the book, right? So now I can give them the book as a PDF, or rather Mr. Manolis can give them the book, because it's his book. Let's see how much that cost us. So, well, me, not you. 104.6, so it costs 50 cents. Right? Which is not bad. Not bad at all, considering that, you know, how much effort it would be for someone to do this by hand. Really quite amazing. ChatGPT 4 is more expensive, right? So I'm going to run it as well, but we won't pause. We'll carry on with the talk whilst we're running that. And I'm also going to bump up the concurrency a bit. So let's delete this whole thing again. delete that Polish. And let's also give it, let's give it 200 semaphore of 200. And we'll run it and continue. So this is not going to do with ChatGPT 4. And we'll see what it costs. And the performance will be a little bit slower than ChatGPT 3.5, but it'll still be fairly good. And then other things like, I mean, I use it like really all the time, this generative AI nowadays, for so many things. Like my friend Kirk Pepperdine and I, we were doing a course together on solving memory leaks. And he had the instructions written as a PDF. But I wanted Markdown, so I just copied and pasted. I uploaded the PDF and I said, convert this to Markdown. And like, I don't look for tools anymore. I just give everything to ChatGPT and say, just do this. And it fixes it for me. And of course, you have to check it, but in the end, it works quite well. So, but what I wanted to do is I wanted to copy the symbolic links from one directory to another. Now, I've never done that before in Java. I mean, I've copied files, but I never copied symbolic links. I didn't know what was involved in that. So again, I just asked ChatGPT to write the code for me. And it did it with this copy symbolic links. And I uploaded that, I sent that out as a newsletter, and my Java Specialist newsletter. If you don't know about that, go to javaspecialist.eu. There are hundreds of editions on that one. But I sent that out, and one of my friends sent me an email saying, because I said, I'm not sure if this is the best way to do it. It was with a file visitor and walk tree method. And he said, you had a hunch that the code from your chatbot might not have been the best. The files walked file tree method is needlessly complex, just use files walk. So I took him by his word, and I tried doing it with files.walk. But the problem with files walk is you have to worry about checked exceptions, which you don't have to worry about with the visitor, because it manages it nicely. So in the end, I actually think that the files walk file tree that the AI generated was better than what my expert Java champion friend suggested. So that's also quite interesting, because basically you look at some code that an expert Java programmer would generate, but you actually might find that when the generative AI gives you some code, it might produce something that you wouldn't have done that way, but would actually is better than what you would have done. Now, in my opinion, I think that the LLM at the moment is still at I think it's at an average programmer status at the moment, but it's not at the top by a long shot. So there's quite a long way to go still. So this is the one that I wrote, that the AI wrote for me. It's basically says you make a visit file, a walk file tree over here. You say visit file, and then if it's a symbolic link, you copy it. Right? You don't worry about the exceptions. So simple enough. And with files.walk, we then have to do something with the exception. So you have to, within the stream, within the lambda, you've got to then catch IO exception, throw the unchecked IO exception, and then catch that again and throw the cause. You know, needlessly complex. I mean, there are other ways to do it, but it sort of didn't really make that much sense to do it this way. I think the visitor is actually the better option. So I've been very surprised by that. So where to next? Last year I was at Devoxx in Belgium, and Stefan asked how many of you are using ChatGPT or AI for LLM for generating code, and very few people put up their hands. So it was like almost nobody. Because a lot of companies are very reluctant, you know, to use it. You know, who owns the ideas, where the idea is coming from. And you have like New York Times, for example, suing Microsoft for copyright violations. And, you know, you obviously know about the lawsuit where Oracle sued Google for copying the Java API. Now, they lost the court case, but it's a very fine line of who owns what and whose ideas are what. IntelliJ, as I showed you, has OpenAI ChatGPT built in, so it's really useful. It's unfortunately not free, you have to pay for it. But they're also going to have on-prem LLM soon. But you have companies like Cohere.com, they've got LLM licenses as well. Microsoft Azure can also allow you to have the data being only for yourself, your own, your own cloud, etc. instance. So all of this is very exciting. So we've got another few minutes for questions about anything to do with virtual threads or LLM or Cretan books, whatever you want. So, do you want to take some questions? We've got another couple of minutes.
Consider using LangChain4j for this, or it was before LangChain4j came up?
Yeah, you could do that. The thing is that I basically didn't bother. Because it's like, I just say, how do you do it? And it shows me how to do it. Right? But, as if you integrate this in a website, you really need to use a more robust system. But for trying out stuff, you don't need to worry about that.
Hello, have you considered using Spring AI or any offline, let's say, model like Olama?
Well, it's the same thing. It's basically, if I wanted to, I could go and say, convert this to Spring AI. Okay, but Spring AI is new, so it wouldn't have that information yet. But yeah, if you're integrating if you integrate this within a website, you want to use something like that. You don't want to be parsing JSON messages yourself.
Any more questions? Lift your hands. No? Awesome. Thank you so much for that great presentation. You'll be with us just today or also?
Unfortunately, I can only stay for one day, so I'm going to be here until tonight.
Until
so
tonight.
So if you have any questions, would like to chat some more about any of this, you're more than welcome to join, to come to me. Okay. I'll be around here somewhere.
Great. So we have a short break now, a 5-10 minute one, but otherwise you can meet Heinz during lunch break. There'll be a good 1 hour one then. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Maria.